Welcome to Talk20MHK. Talk20 is a collaborative project of UFM Community Learning Center and Manhattan Public Library focused on building strong community connections by giving individuals a platform to share their knowledge, stories, and skills with others in the community. My name is Carol Barta, and I told my story in the second edition of Talk20MHK. This event would not be possible without the 6 presenters you will hear from tonight. We sincerely appreciate each and every one of them stepping up and responding to the call for presenters. Fearlessly coming along with UFM and Manhattan Public Library on this journey that is Talk20MHK. Each presenter is sharing a piece of themselves with you tonight, their passion, their hobby, their project, or their experience. We also want to thank each of you for being here tonight and taking time to attend. So many people have asked, what is Talk20MHK? Technically, it's 6 presenters talking for 20 seconds, each on 20 slides about their given topic with no exceptions. Topics have ranged from paddling the Kansas waterways to sword fighting. If you or someone you know would be a great Talk20MHK presenter, you're in luck. Our next event will be held March 26, 2020, and the invitation for presentation proposals is now open at the Talk20MHK.org website. We are recording tonight's event. The video of the presentations will be archived on our website, Talk20MHK.org. Did I mention our website, Talk20MHK.org? There will be time for questions at the end of all the presentations, so please hold your questions until that time. You all received a piece of paper, and it has a little blank spot on the bottom there. You can write your questions down so you don't forget them. That's always really important. There also are snacks and drinks over here that we'll be enjoying now at the end of the presentation. I know some of you were able to get some before that. So before we get started, there's a couple of little housekeeping things. One is that hearing devices are available if anybody needs them. And please let a library staff person know if you need one. Library staff, would you let them know who you are? Okay. Restrooms are in the atrium to the left. Cell phones on stun, please. Well, if we all turn our cell phones off, but they're probably likely to act like little angry bees at some point if they go off. Give your undivided attention to each presenter and show your appreciation for them with applause at the end of their presentation. Write down your questions, as I said, and we will conclude by 8:30 p.m. The library closes at 9 p.m., and that's no exceptions. Thank you again for attending this evening, and we'll begin the presentations now. So our first presenter tonight is Jorge Gomez. Jorge Gomez is the Public Affairs Officer for Irwin Army Community Hospital on Fort Riley. He received his master's degree in communication from University College, Denver University, and a bachelor's degree in intercultural studies from Biola University, La Mirada, California. Jorge was born and raised in Central California. His 3 kids attend Amanda Arnold Elementary School, Anthony Middle School, and Manhattan High School. His wife, Olga, is a paraeducator and interpreter at Amanda Arnold. Looking back on life, Jorge wishes he had pursued a career in mathematics and learned to play the cello. Please welcome Jorge Gomez.
About 4 years ago, I decided to teach 2 of my kids, algebra. At the time, they were in 4th and in 6th grade. What started off initially a bit of as a dare eventually became something else, because about 18 or 20 months later, I had covered a lot of material. But then I started to get a little bit nervous about whether I had done the right thing, because I was afraid that they were going to get bored in class during their math class, that they wouldn't be stimulated intellectually during their math session. And sure enough, at a couple times at our dinner table, I think maybe 2 or 3 times, my son would burst out saying, "I'm so bored in math." And that began to trouble me. I really thought, maybe I didn't do the right thing here. So I decided, instead of teaching them geometry or advanced algebra, that I would teach them something else that they wouldn't get in school. I was really afraid that they were going to disengage and become complacent. So I thought, I know, I'll teach them statistics because I know they won't get that in school. And in addition to that, I thought I'll also teach them probability because when I went through school, I reached all the way, I went trigonometry and calculus, and I remember probability being this esoteric subject. It was always on the periphery, so I was glad that we were able to kind of get through it and just go to the next real thing. I didn't want my kids to feel that unease, so I decided we're gonna really tackle this on. Probability is kind of deceiving because on the one hand, all you have to do is count all the possible outcomes and gauge that against the desired outcome that you're looking for. Pretty straightforward. A couple things though. First, our human intuitions about probability are notorious. They're actually very unreliable. For instance, you are 800 more times of getting killed in a car accident than flying in a commercial airplane. Yet we don't think twice about riding our vehicles to come here, and yet we always get a little bit nervous. We might even have a little bit of a panic attack when we take off on that airplane, right? Okay, so if you wanted to find out the probability of drawing a black pair of socks from a sock full of drawers, all you'd have to do is count all the pairs of socks against the black ones, and there, you get your probability, right? Pretty straightforward. Same with, say, a padlock. All you have to do is count the digits, multiply them, and then you get all the possible combinations to get a sense as to how effective it is as a secure feature. But if you look at a girl's closet, now you get a little bit complicated because not every blouse is going to match up against every pair of pants and against every pair of shoes, right? So the rules of fetish are going to start to limit you and kind of now some nuances are going to get in there. It starts to get a little complex, right? Let's suppose that you had a birthday party, but you could only afford 8 guests, but you've got 10 friends. So how do you navigate this social dilemma? Well, in conditional probability, you actually start to look at the fact that, well, maybe some of them are not going to show up, and can you incorporate that probability into your overall decision? Let's scale this up a bit. Let's say that you were a gynecologist, and you had a patient that presented a positive mammogram. What do you say to your patient if you know that 9% of the cases, that's a false positive? How do you kind of work through that, right? Especially as a patient, being literate in statistics would help. See, in probability, you actually go into a full analysis. There's this thing called Bayes' theorem that actually maps out all the possibilities and assigns the individual probabilities to come up with one final probability of what you're looking for, right? All right, let's kind of put that to the side and let's talk about statistics. Let's take into account the heights of all college basketball players, the ACT scores of all 11th graders in the country, and let's throw in there while we're at it, all the late fees and fines of Manhattan Public Library cardholders. What you would notice is that they all share in common a normal distribution. Now, this bell curve actually has a lot of insightful properties, but we can't even begin to tease them out because we need to understand a few things. For instance, if you look at these two data sets, they have the same mean, but yet the yellow data set is far more dispersed. It's called variance, standard deviation, actually. So these are very important concepts, standard deviation, variance, the bell-shaped curve, and none of our kids are going to be taught this in school. And it's kind of odd because we're living in an age in which they're actually consuming digital media. And oh, by the way, they're all programs and algorithms that are informed by, guess what, statistics, probability, because we're living in the age of big data, where being able to predict people's preferences is invaluable. I mean, we're living actually, big data is, as a result, this is the gold rush of our era. And see, that compels me to promote statistical literacy to our kids at a very young age so that they can start to develop those critical skills that they're going to need to be able to not just consume passively, but perhaps even to shape it. Statistical literacy does one very important thing. It helps our kids to learn to live with uncertainty. Because in what other subject or discipline are you going to actually gauge one level of risk with another to make a decision? Because that's what life is all about, right? It's not X equals 3. And here's the irony of it all. All you need to really start getting into probability and statistics is just a good dose of algebra. That's it. Just high school algebra is all you need, and now you'll be able to really have a working knowledge of the things that we're surrounded with. This next photo is a picture of my son who is trying to measure the probability of committing a type 2 error. That's basically what he's trying to figure out is if the likelihood of failing to reject a false hypothesis, right? I mean, how cool is that you can measure the probability of error, right? And guess what? All he has in his background, algebra. This is the math course sequence of most of our kids. They'll start in algebra and reach all the way perhaps to calculus. And as a periphery, on the fringe is statistics and probability. It's kind of thought of as an exception. It's not the core, which is kind of odd in my opinion because, again, we're living in the age of big data, probability, statistics. All right, so what's the takeaway here? I'm not going to hold my breath and wait for the system to change and update itself, right? So instead, I think that we as parents should take responsibility to teach our own kids so that they can become or make a statistically significant difference in our world. Thank you.
Our second speaker tonight is Megan Hartford. Megan is what author Elizabeth Gilbert would lovingly refer to as a hummingbird, more concerned with following her curiosity from flower to flower than pinning down one true passion. She's a stay-at-home mom, a yoga studio owner, a teacher, a Reiki master, a sporadic writer, a part-time poet, a mediocre photographer, an amateur gardener, a pitiful seamstress, an excellent cook, and a voracious reader. She's been everything from a toll booth collector to a waitress to a high school English teacher. Megan is a native Kansan who has lived in Manhattan off and on for the past 20 years, and she currently lives here with her husband and 2 daughters. She has also lived in France and traveled through 35 states and 11 countries, and she won't rest until she visits Morocco, India, all of our national parks, and every place that Laura Ingalls Wilder ever lived. Please welcome Megan Hartford.
Kansas, Colorado, Nebraska, South and North Dakota, Montana, Canada, Idaho, and Wyoming. 2-lane highways, campgrounds and teepees, national parks, monuments, landmarks, and forests, and many unexpected finds. 17 days on the road, 17 days on my own. A journey is made up of many silent moments that move the soul and make our spirit dance. Reading John Steinbeck's Travels with Charlie was the only catalyst I needed. Nearly a year after reading the final line of Steinbeck's account of his travels, and that's how the traveler came home again, I left home to experience a piece of our country. A stretch of roads before me, some are missing from my map. These are the roads that will make up my journey, day 1. Ancestors and backroad cemeteries, the historic town of Nicodemus, stumbling upon my Grammy's childhood school, camping beneath the expanse of Chimney Rock. Blades of grass sighing, moving together as one, tickling the tips of my fingers. Day 2. The whimsical art of Carhenge, exploring Scotts Bluff and the agate fossil beds in the hot July sun, feeling somber through Pine Ridge and Wounded Knee, getting lost in the Badlands at dusk. The earth rises up to touch the sky, rigidly resisting the advances of the prairie, rejecting the idea of what it should be. Day 3. The morning shines a new light on the Badlands, illuminating its unmatched rugged beauty, communing with bison, birds, and buffalo grass before making my way toward the Black Hills. Like giants, the trees spring up, curling around curves, protecting the wildflowers. Day 4. Dropping down into the caves of the Black Hills, winding through the towering trees and rising rocks of Needles Highway, settling down for the evening in my tent, full from the fish I caught for dinner. Quietly sprawled across the Dakota up north, fewer glimpse your sweet clover. The lucky ones are blessed by your beauty. Day 5. Down highways framed by fields of yellow sweet clover, a quick pass through the subtle, often overlooked splendor of Theodore Roosevelt National Park, and then on to the aptly named Big Sky Country of Montana. Clouds compete to be in its sky, its grass beckons my bare feet. Hills roll and rise into a grin. Day 6. Experiencing the expansive plains and quiet beauty of Little Bighorn, and the pleasant sense of solitude that one feels on the open roads of Montana, pulling into Whitefish and feeling right at home. I twist and turn toward the top like a vine, among the towering trees that are merely peasants, to shiver with the snow that sits like a crown on its peaks. Day 7. Glaciers going to the sun road, windows down, a cool breeze on my face, a warm heart with a quickening pace as the road takes me perilously close to the edge. The wind kicks up, waking the weeping willow. Its languid branches brush across my face, recalling a love too far away. Day 8. A little over 24 hours, and Whitefish feels like a second home. Farmers markets, pizza and sushi, strolling along streets, smiling at strangers, lounging on the shore of the lake. The breeze sweeps through his caramel mane, smelling of a life lived solely outside. As the sun seeps through the trees, illuminating my face, I imagine how wonderful that would be. Day 9. His name was Dollar, a gentle guide for this novice rider, through the bright meadows and shady groves, a fitting farewell to magnificent Montana. The trees cast their reflections on the still waters of the lake, sparkling blue in the sunshine. Day 10. Where could the day end when it starts at a bordello? Fine dining on Lake Coeur d'Alene with new friends, a warm bath, and a deep sleep in a cozy bed for this weary traveler. Rolling over hills blanketed in green, through valleys torn in half by meandering streams, frequent turnouts to take it all in. Day 11, marveling at the natural beauty as it unfolds before me, searching for hot springs, finding disappointment, a cleansing ritual in an obliging stream, tucking in for the night in a teepee. Naked trees expose their leafless limbs. Some lean on the others for support. I descend into the valley and leave these skeletons behind. Day 12. Crossing into Wyoming, bound for Yellowstone. Geysers and thermal pools, rushing waterfalls and mud pots, all overflowing with tourists. So grand, perhaps you look at nothing else. When you do finally gaze into its mighty shadow, you find the sagebrush smiling, waiting to sing. Day 13. Grateful to be staying with family, delighted by Du Bois with its art and history fair, amazed by the awesome Tetons, overwhelmed by overcrowded Jackson Hole. Seemingly spun on a potter's wheel, fired by the sun, brush strokes in yellows, greens, and browns. The artist dips her brush in blue paint and drags it through the valleys. Day 14. Wyoming fades into Colorado, a subtle change in scenery. Only a few days remain, soaking up my surroundings as they slip by outside my window. The trees rise into a standing ovation. The blades of grass and wildflowers bow in the breeze. The stream smiles up at the mountains, her masterpiece complete. Day 15. Nature mingles with quirky garage art at Sweatsville Zoo. The Rockies, always on the horizon, suddenly take center stage. Dinner in Denver with a friend. Small towns pass in the blink of an eye, sad skeletons of what they once were. Who will remember to save them? Day 16. Colorado cliff dwellings and Garden of the Gods. Finding the muted beauty in the desolate drive across western Kansas. The wacky roadside art of M.T. Liggett. Enveloped in love at Grammy and Papa's. Familiar roads send me home, first navigated by my parents 40 years ago. Each time traveled feels like the last. Day 17. Southbound of Pratt, Sawyer, Isabel, Zenda, Harper's halfway. Wellington means we're close. And finally, the water tower would welcome us home. And just like that, I was back to the hot, sweeping winds and dusty plains of my youth. I wouldn't stay long, though, before hopping back into my car and hitting the road for Manhattan. A smile crept across my face as I looked into my rearview mirror to see the rippling grass along the dirt roads waving goodbye.
Tonight's third speaker is Matthew Olson. Matthew J. Olson published his first book in 2014, Shorts, and never stopped writing. He began writing short stories as a way to draw attention to his novels. He found some success in these stories, so he published another collection in 2015, Dark Matter. He has now written a total of 3 collections of short stories and has published 4 novels. Matthew lives in Junction City, Kansas, and works for Aceware Systems in Manhattan, Kansas, as a technician since 2008. He obtained a bachelor's degree in computer science from Kansas State University. He also has an associate's degree from Colby Community College. Creativity is Matthew's passion. Words on a page or lines of code in a program or web page are the same to him. He just hopes that other people enjoy his creations. Please welcome Matthew Olson.
I've been doing Write What You Know as kind of a personal journey of mine for a while now, so thought I'd share a little bit about it with you guys. Source of inspiration for me. The phrase was originally coined by Mark Twain, or at least it's attributed to him. The thing is, did he necessarily follow that? You originally were taught Write What You Know in high school. I actually remember before that in 5th grade I was taught it, but in college they tend to steer people away from Write What You Know. They want you to get out of the box or something and not stifle your imagination by just doing what you know. The thing is, I think you start with something you know and grow your imagination from that. And I'm going to show some examples of that. Another argument against Write What You Know is that it's too autobiographical. But is that necessarily a bad thing? Sometimes you want to use your senses and be able to show that in your writing or whatever creative passion you're following. One example that comes to mind is Pensacola Beach. You know, those white sands and the crystal clear water and me reading on the beach underneath the umbrellas. That sparked. That came back to me when I started writing about a demon on vacation. So another thing that I am is an avid pheasant hunter, and that tends to show up in my writing from time to time. The thrill of the hunt, the hunter and dog interaction, and just all that stuff that you go through as a hunter, it's rich with details. I actually took a actual event that happened and wrote it down verbatim and gave it to one of my characters. It happened in a Milo field, kind of like this one, although in northwest Kansas we don't have that many trees. So I'm a software developer now, and I'm always security conscious when I'm writing code and thinking about hackers and loopholes, and that has trickled over into my writing, my fiction writing, not just my code writing. One thing, this I don't have personal experience about, employee theft. I witnessed some events when I was working retail, so those just, hey, let's write about them. One thing we should all know about is tornadoes, especially those of you who have been around Manhattan since 2008. Actually, one specific one I remember is a helicopter traveling next to one as it's hitting Kansas City, and that just comes to mind when I write about tornadoes. Anybody like telemarketers? I had a telemarketer today. It just totally ticked me off, but yeah, I took out my frustrations one day in one of my stories, so hopefully that helped me heal a little bit. One of the things is, what if you don't know something? Maybe you've started with something you knew, and then you've gotten to a point where you no longer know things. That's where you need to start researching, start learning, expand your knowledge as best as you can, because, hey, writer's block is no joke. Get through it somehow. One thing I had to research was landing an amphibious plane in Tuttle Creek Lake. Needed to know how much one cost, what the operational range was. Those weren't facts that were in my head. I had to go figure them out. So that made for a better story. I wanted to break the speed of light in my ship. So I wanted to go and learn relativity before I went and broke it. Got halfway through the theory of relativity and just was like, that's too advanced for me. But I learned enough to at least get through writing. one of the books I wrote, I needed a church, and I wanted it somewhere close to here. So I found this church south of Manhattan, just off of McDowell Creek Road, and it just opened up a whole world of possibilities. For one thing, it was originally built in 1870. So that got me going on all sorts of research projects, researching what Manhattan was like in 1870. The waterways, Kansas River and the Smoky Hill were definitely different. There weren't these two big lakes that we have now around here. So yeah, that took a little bit of research. I was tired of my characters always eating rabbit. So I thought, well, I'm a pheasant hunter. Why don't I research when pheasant came into Kansas? And darn, it was too late for me to use in my book for 1870. 1906, for those of you who are interested, is when they came to Kansas. Best advice I can give for any of you that are aspiring writers or even in any creativity, creative thing you're doing is read. Not for writing, you're going to get learning grammar, researching, inspiration definitely from reading, but mainly just look around you. We're literally surrounded by a library of information. So look around, get some inspiration, go out, write on your own, or whatever creative passion you're doing. For me, it was writing, then publishing, and then repeating the process all over again. So thank you guys. You've been a great audience. Enjoy the rest.
Our fourth speaker tonight is Patricia Payne. Patricia has always been an animal person. Her young life revolved around horses and dogs, and she came to Kansas from California after high school to pursue veterinary medicine in 1965. After graduation, Patricia was able to find a great job in a small animal veterinary medicine in Northern Virginia. Years later, she bought a 120-acre farm just outside of Fredericksburg, Virginia, and established a small animal clinic on the farm. Personal pets on the farm included 4 labs, a greyhound, 12 cats, about 100 ewes and lambs. Due to the constant parasite problems in her clinic patients and her flock, she responded to an ad for a graduate position in veterinary clinical parasitology and moved back to Manhattan. Patricia fell in love with her studies and the amazing young people in the college, so she stayed put and retired from KSU in May of 2015. Patricia is here tonight to share with you what she considers to be the most significant and rewarding life challenge that started when she learned how to raise and train guide, service, and facility dogs. She has grown to realize that life isn't just about animals, it's about the people too. Please welcome Patricia Payne.
So this is really not about the dogs, it's about the people. I know that's going to disappoint some of you. But it's the people that use guide dogs. They're the ones that are sight impaired. Service dogs are used by people that are mobility or medically dependent. And professional people use facility dogs. Some of the professional people we'll get to in a little bit. My inspiration was one afternoon I sat down and listened to Ed and Tony Ames talk about their guide dogs and how wonderful they were. They'd used these dogs for years and years and years. They were world travelers. They took these dogs to South Africa as well as England. And they explained to me what happens between the time the puppies are born and the time they go to work. So I got really fascinated, and I chose KSDS assistance dogs because it's close to here. It's in Washington, Kansas. It's certified by ADI. It has purpose-bred golden retrievers and labs, and the trainers also use the facilities at Topeka. This is accessible housing that is at KSTS. I want you to notice things like the wide sidewalks. The washer and dryer are accessible if you're in a wheelchair, but the bathroom is what everybody talks about because you can wheel into the shower, you can wheel under the sink and brush your teeth and plug your hair dryer in. My job as a puppy raiser was to make sure that these dogs had a happy, healthy puppyhood. And the students at K-State and the vet clinic were always happy to see happy, healthy puppies because they're usually tied up with pretty sick dogs. So we ran and played and just had a generally wonderful time. These dogs had to be submissive, not only to other dogs, but to people as well. We had to have positive interactions with people and dogs of all ages and have fun. It was really important for these dogs to have fun and have positive, good, inspirational times with us. These are a few of the people that helped me socialize these pups and support KSDS at the dog park. The veterinary students over there, some are appropriate, some are not so appropriate in handling these dogs, but it's a good thing. And of course, the Lions Club here in Manhattan, Kansas was a strong supporter because of their mission to support guide dogs. There was close to 100 veterinary students that signed up to walk this gorgeous golden retriever because they were kind of dog deprived, but they fell in love with Marilyn, the person that actually was using this dog as a service dog. They found her to be truly awesome and inspirational. Her brain was fabulous, but she couldn't speak. So basic obedience commands, and we went to Manhattan Kennel Club. You know, you have to use your local services here. Hurry up. We trot these dogs to urinate and defecate on command, which I thought was a joke, but it really is true. And to pick up anything, toys, phones, remote, shoes. I've got a picture over there of stuff that one of the dogs picks up. All these dogs at KSDS are theme named for the litters, and the puppy raisers that raise the puppies out of the same litter are a lot like parents of third graders. We compare and go back and forth. My puppy's better than your puppy. And this is a picture of the nuts. There's pistachio and peanut. And this was my first pup, this Maze. She ended up being a service dog for Anna, who had MS. I traveled to New York City with this dog, to Philadelphia in the summer with this dog. I learned how difficult it is to travel by plane with these dogs. It's no fun. You've got crates and foods and all kinds of things. But she worked out really well. Ajani was part of the Potawatomi litter. Her name is Angel in Native Potawatomi, and Angels on Earth. Mike and Libby are there with me up in the corner there. Ajani went to work for Patrick, who's a young college student in Washington. She could sleep through any 50-minute lecture, and she was also a chick magnet. He wrote back and said, "You were right." This is Tinsel. He was a guide dog. He was really an easy pup. He was trained for Ernie and then for Mike, and here he is interviewing students for admission to vet school. He eased the tension. This is Champagne, and you see the puppy in the middle? That attitude lasted most of his puppyhood. He was really a hard-nosed, difficult dog, but he was a great napper. There he is napping with me after chemo, and it was a good thing he's gone to work with Shelley, who was a lawyer, and he does really, really well for her. This is Barstow. I didn't get Barstow till he was 8 or 9 months old. He was fat. He'd hardly ever been anywhere, but he was really good with grandchildren. So his partner, Teresa, is an autism specialist, and he's very happy, and he's in his element because he gets to go work with kids all the time. This is Bing. He was one of my very favorite, really easy pups. The picture up on top there, he's 12 weeks old. We drove to Olathe, sat through 2 presentations for MPH students. He was perfect. His partner is Josh, and that one picture on the far side, it's kind of hard to tell who's steering that vehicle, but they're perfect match. Josh is in the wheelchair here. This is the day they graduated from class at KSDS. He left his cane on the bed and went home, and now he goes on vacation more than I ever could think of. And the far picture is fairly recent at a stroke meeting, and he was doing really, really well. This is Clutch. He's a guide dog for Marianne, who's in the middle there, but he's another one I got late in life, and this picture is about the second day I had him, lifted the back of the car up and terrified, horrified at the number of people and dogs, and you mean I have to get out here? But he came along, and this is pictures of Wilma, my keeper dog. I never had to say much to these dogs about house manners because Wilma was in charge. She could get on the furniture, they could not. We had no counter surfing in my house. And once she got these dogs straightened out, they were pretty good friends, but she was always in control. So these dogs are always in my heart. I'm just thrilled that I get to talk to some of the people that still use them. And they brought amazing people into my life. There are people that talk to me that never would speak to me without the fact that I had these dogs. We shed a lot of tears, and but we also had a lot of love.
The fifth speaker tonight is Mandy Ryan. Mandy has been a Kansas resident for 22 years and loves the diversity the area has to offer. She has taken on many roles in those years, including mother, housewife, grandmother, caregiver, custodian, office manager, accountant, Reiki instructor, business manager, facilitator, and volunteer. Mandy's passion sparks from her work with community on differing levels to support empowerment, growth, and learning for all. Her favorite pastimes are spending time with the kids and grandkids, exploring life, reconnecting with nature, and learning more about herself and the world every day. Please welcome Mandy Ryan.
All right, so what is self-care? Self-care is not selfish. It's loving yourself in the most pure manner possible. It's really easy to get caught up in the hustle and bustle of our daily lives, and self-care is something that helps remind us to take a little breather and to have some downtime in between. You can't pour from an empty cup. Take care of yourself first. This sounds like a fluffy motivational message, but it really is not. It is more important than most people realize. It is really important to take a moment or an hour or a day just to have some time to yourself so that you can refill your cup. The change for me came over about a 10-month period in my life, although the transition into learning new things was almost instantaneous. I became pregnant in 2004. My older daughters were 10 and 8 at the time. My husband was deployed at the time my daughter was born, and she was slightly jaundiced, but very healthy otherwise, and she was made quite a difference in our lives. We had quite a transition in having a new baby around. For her first Christmas, we spent time with our family here in town, and then we decided to travel to visit our family in Montana. And en route, we were involved in a rollover vehicle accident. Myself, my older daughter, and Aurora, the baby, were all thrown from the vehicle. The next day, she was life-flighted to the Children's Hospital, and she passed away a few days later. No matter how much suffering you went through, you never wanted to let go of those memories. It was very difficult for us to adjust to her absence after having spent that time and adjusting to having her here. So my solution was to become an alcoholic. This was not the best solution, but it was what was available to me at the time, or so I thought. I was stuck in the moment and the feeling of loss of not having my daughter with me. Excuse me. So I found that I couldn't provide for myself, let alone for anybody else. But when you hit rock bottom, the only way left is up. I woke up one day and realized that this is not where I needed to be. I was not providing for myself, and I was not providing for my family. Her memory deserved much better for me and those around me also. A bird is safe in its nest, but that is not what its wings are made for. I realized that the only person out there that could help me was me, but I needed help in doing so. So first I quit drinking, and then I found some help. I learned the benefits of meditation and Reiki and taking time for myself. And I learned that every choice we make creates a ripple in our lives, but it also creates a ripple in the lives of the people around us. Self-care is the attitudes and actions that contribute to happiness, balance, and well-being. Knowing that you are worthy of your own love is as important as knowing that others are worthy of your love as well. This learning helps us to lead into self-care as a daily practice to maintain that balance. This acronym kind of speaks to me. Self-care meaning supporting essential loving feelings for self, creatively aspiring to refresh your enthusiasm. I challenge each of you to find an acronym or a saying of some sort that helps you to remember that self-care is an essential part of our lives. Reiki was another one of those turning points for me. I learned the importance of Reiki in my life as a part of my self-care toolkit. This helped me to learn about myself and to change my perspectives for physical, mental, and emotional health, which also led into meditation. One of my favorite quotes says, if you have the time, take 20 minutes a day to meditate. If you don't have the time, take an hour. This, to me, is important in saying that that time away is as important as anything else we do. Passion is energy. Feel the power that comes from focusing on what excites you. Anything in your life that brings you passion, that is exciting for you, is an important part of your toolkit. Self-care is an individual practice, and finding that passion helps you to remember to maintain that in your life, such as taking a luxurious bath, getting a massage, reading, walking, dancing, anything that brings you joy. Self-care also means honoring yourself, saying no when you mean no, mindful eating, sleeping, and stepping away from stressful situations. My passion is spending time with my family. My daughters are grown now. We travel quite a bit. We learn from each other, and every day I learn new perspectives and insights from the things that they've learned as well throughout our lives. And these are my granddaughters. Their reminders in my life are that play is important. It is really important to take that time out to use our imaginations and to grow, as well as not stressing over every little thing. Sometimes the little things are what really brings us joy. In conclusion, I'll leave you with this thought. I lied and said I was busy. I was busy, but not in a way most people understand. I was busy taking deeper breaths. I was busy silencing irrational thoughts. I was busy calming a racing heart. I was busy telling myself I am okay. Sometimes this is my busy, and I will not apologize for it. Remember to be gentle with yourself. Have you told you lately that you love you?
Our final speaker tonight is Nathan Ryan. Exploring ancient wisdom of the ketogenic diet. Nathan is originally from Pleasant Hill, Missouri, and studies agronomy and plant pathology at K-State. His interests include gardening, cooking, beer brewing, history, and fitness. Sometimes these subjects overlap, which is the subject of his talk. After graduating in December of this year, Nathan will begin pursuing a master's degree in plant genetics. Please welcome Nathan Ryan.
So I'd like to start off by lending a little perspective to human diet and nutrition. If all of human history were just a single day, agriculture would have been invented at 11:56 p.m. I think this is important when navigating human nutrition, and it can be a very complicated science, but if you keep this in mind, I think it'll guide you along your journey. And yet, this is the information on health and nutrition that we are given often as children. They recommend that we eat 6 to 11 servings of grain a day. And, if grain has only been around for the last 4 minutes in a 24-hour period, then it seems kind of backwards to me. And the traditional food of 99% of human history is to be limited. The Maasai warriors are a group of people that live in eastern Kenya, and they derive over 2/3 of their daily calories from saturated fat. There's virtually no evidence of cancer, diabetes, or any sort of metabolic disorder within the Maasai, and they eat consistently almost no plant matter at all. Another example are Polynesian people that derive the majority of their calories from saturated coconut fat. And again, very low incidence of any metabolic disease. That is until you introduce white flour, refined sugar, alcohol, and the other things that come with being a modern nation. This Icelandic doctor living in New York was fascinated by the way the Arctic people ate virtually no plant matter at all. He tried this diet on himself in New York in the early 1920s, and everyone told him he was going to die. By his estimation, it seemed that mentally and physically he had never felt better in his life. The diet he was escaping, of course, is this, the standard American diet, or as I like to call it, eternal autumn. All of our junk foods even mimic the eternal symbol that autumn has come, the acorn. And this fat-carb combo tells our brains that winter is coming, and so it sets off a feeding frenzy. One way to escape this diet is the ketogenic diet, which is largely a fat-based diet with very restricted carbohydrate consumption and moderate protein. This would be the diet that is most likely what 99% of all human generations ate before the invention of agriculture. I've heard this myth throughout my entire life that the brain runs on glucose, and the brain must have glucose to run. And in fact, this isn't true. And like I've just stated, there are many examples of people that consume almost no carbohydrate at all, and yet they have no signs that they're dying or that their brain isn't functioning. One way that the body can produce fuel for the brain in the absence of glucose or carbohydrates is converting fat to what we call ketone bodies. These three chemicals, acetone, acetoacetate, and beta-hydroxybutyrate, which are a more efficient fuel for the brain than glucose, which we'll get to here in a second. One of the great advantages of the ketogenic diet is the appetite control. All diets work if they're adhered to, but it's really hard to adhere to a diet if you're always hungry. The great thing about the ketogenic diet is you're almost never hungry. I mean, evolution did not favor people with low appetite, and that's why we are constantly hungry, especially in this consistent autumn that we live in. The other way to escape eternal autumn is with a low-fat diet. The problem with this is that while initially satiating, carbohydrates about 4 hours later spike the hunger hormone more than any other macronutrient. In fact, fat and protein don't even spike the hunger hormone. Only carbohydrates are capable of doing that. Another thing that has been noted that I think is incredible is the actual reversal of type 2 diabetes. So, some patients are able to quit their medications altogether, and even those that aren't able to see improving fasting glucose, insulin, hemoglobin A1C, and overall live better, healthier, longer lives. Most brain disease is in fact an energy problem, meaning that the brain is flushed with lots of glucose but is unable to use it for a host of reasons. And that's one of the ways that the ketogenic diet is enhancing lives, is through enhanced brain function in people with neurodegenerative diseases. One of these is Alzheimer's. In Alzheimer's, neurons in the brain become unable to respond to insulin, which is the hormone responsible for shuttling glucose into cells where it can be utilized as energy. So if the brain is unable to use glucose as energy, then we're looking for an alternate fuel source. Another application, the original application, was for children with epilepsy. And in the early 1920s, they noted that more than half of people see a 50% reduction in the number of seizures that they have. The presence of ketone bodies in the brain alters the genes involved in energy metabolism and makes it so that people don't have as many seizures. So this is beta-hydroxybutyrate. This is the main ketone body that the liver will produce. It has been shown in clinical studies to increase brain mitochondria count, and it is more energy efficient than glucose as a source of energy because it doesn't require insulin to shuttle it to be burned. So I think this is interesting. Most mammals, with the exception of a few fruit bats, actually primarily burn fat most of the time. Even cows, the matter that enters their true stomach after it's fermented is mostly fat and protein. So very little carbohydrate is being utilized by cows. So I had to try this diet out for myself, and I have never felt better. Like, I just cannot stress to you how good I felt. I woke up every day with so much energy. I slept better. Like, my workouts were better. That's just like, by every marker that I could assess, my life had improved every day. I'm a firm believer that we need to rethink the food pyramid and include more of those foods that the 99% of humans ate throughout history, and fewer of those foods that were invented in the last 4 minutes of a 24-hour period, like bread and grains and refined sugars. So the takeaway message is that humans are a highly evolved fat-burning species, and that the carb-fat combo, the standard American diet that we live in today, is quite possibly deadly, and that ketones are a better fuel, and by my estimation, probably the intended fuel for our brains. Thank you.
Presentations, and we'll now open up the mic for questions for our presenters. So would you guys bring your chairs up front here?
What do you know about doctors prescribing the keto diet to type 2 diabetics?
I know that the American Heart Association is not a big fan. It's largely based on a erroneous set of studies done in the 1960s by Harvard Medical School. They cherry-picked data in the Mediterranean region and vilified saturated fat. And basically it percolates through every American Heart Association decision to this day. And I would say that, at least in the United States, it is not widely adopted as a treatment for diabetes. But it is in Ireland and the United Kingdom more so.
Okay, this is not a stacked question. I didn't know you were going to be here. Okay, how old are you?
I'm 22.
Okay, when did you discover this?
Probably about 2 years ago.
Okay, 20-year-old. I didn't discover it until 3 months ago. Anyway, I have Parkinson's. My symptoms have improved. The doctor says 80%. My nephrologist said I'd be on dialysis within a year. He now says your kidney function has improved 50%. He said it'll never be what it was when I was 22. Now, I've never done that specifically, but I hope to start that in about a month. Now, in other words, we need to talk. Okay? I'm a businessman, so just to give you a clue.
What diet did you do? I think we didn't do that.
Everything this young man said is true. I'm a biologist by training. He just is leaving out one step, and I know if he knows what that step is, he would agree with it, and that is what we eat is important, and of course fat is the number one thing we should be eating, even though American medical genius has said stay away from fat, trim the fat. So I get the trimmings from the butcher, okay? And my dog and I've lost 40 pounds in the last 8 weeks, and he's lost 10, and he only weighed 30 when he started. And when the vet told me that Polo's going to have to be on insulin, just like you, if you don't get some weight off of him, we pay attention about our pets, don't we? We feed them a perfect diet, we exercise them, we do all these things, but we don't do it for ourselves. I got rid of my diabetes in 6 days. Okay. No, I haven't gotten to that yet. It's all in the timing, when you eat. When you eat. I stopped eating on July the 14th. I resumed on September the 15th for a holiday. Went to Texas to see friends and have a celebration, and I've been eating from then until the day before yesterday. I've got 15 more pounds to go, and when I get there, I call it fighting weight, just like him. Look, just like him. Okay, he's perfect health condition, right? Any doctor would verify that. And you stand on that little machine, and that electric current goes up through your body and measures all these things, these variables. So anyway, it's in the timing. My time from beginning or stopping eating to starting happened to be, 2 months. So
I think we have another question
Go ahead.
ready to go.
My question's for Jorge. As a parent who despises math but knows that it's important, where do you recommend we start?
Khan Academy is pretty good, actually. That would be, in fact, that has been one of my sources. He really does an amazing job of breaking it down. And he really tries to go for your intuitions to try to understand instead of just kind of memorizing and kind of going through the formulas and all that. Thank you.
This one's for Matthew. Off the top of my head, have you ever heard of NaNoWriMo?
Mm-hmm.
Do you participate?
No.
Oh.
I'll tell you why. Well, first of all, I work full time, plus write, and I have so many things going on at any one time that I burned myself out. And I've heard of other writers burning themselves out trying to do NaNoWriMo. And for those of you that don't know, it's 50,000 words in a month. So basically a full novel.
Not always. They don't count editing.
Right. Yeah, and I'm one of those, I write and edit and edit and edit, and then I write some more and edit.
Gotcha.
So I would have to give up editing, and I can't do that. So
Okay.
it's just not right for me.
I apologize, I'm terrible with names, but you, ma'am, I was wondering if you'd speak a little bit about your meditation practice, where you learned about it, why you decided to start using it, what that looks like.
All right, so for my meditation practice, basically that came from some friends of mine that already did some meditating in their lives and had some personal practices that they did that I kind of adopted. One of the myths of meditation is that you have to clear your mind completely. That is not possible. So one of the things that I had to learn as far as meditation goes is that when those thoughts come through, that the trick to meditation is to sit and allow those to go through, but not attach to them. So you have all these random things going. Did I pack the kids' lunch today? Did I forget to turn off the coffee pot? I don't know what I'm going to do for dinner. They just have to flow. And so if you take even just 5 minutes sometimes just to sit down and, listen to the birds, listen to the cars pass by, let those thoughts flow through your head, then the time spent, 5 minutes, 10 minutes, an hour, helps to refocus and be centered in the moment when you're done meditating. Did that answer your question? Okay.
I have a question about dog training. Is there a difference in the different professions that the dogs do in the puppy stages of training?
So the question is, are there differences in training the puppies for different, or encouraged totally not to think about the path that this dog will follow? So the basic training is the same all the way across the board. Things like socialization and meeting new and wonderful people, and being a calm and well-behaved dog goes for all these professions. Once they go back to KSDS, the trainers are very good at letting the dogs, what they say is, choose their own profession. Like this dog, well, he would rather be a guide dog than be a service dog or a facility dog. And I don't know how these wonderful people figured this out, but they sure found the perfect people and perfect paths for my dogs. Some of which I kind of thought were going to happen, and other times it was a complete and total surprise. I really thought I was going to get Champagne back. I didn't really think he would ever have a profession, because he was that rotten child. And like I said, it's really, really good that Shelley has him. She'd grown up with Labradors and is really a strong and powerful person, even in a wheelchair. And she really has brought him around. I've got a picture over here she sent me of all the things he picked up for her in the last couple days, and it's amazing array and assortment of stuff. And I think she was also pretty brave to put it up there online.
Are you still doing that?
I'm not still doing this. That last little black pup ran into me and broke my leg 2 years ago, so I've kind of aged out of this. And the other thing was, I always thought that surely one of these pups would fail and I'd get him back, because the puppy raisers get to take them back. And like my friend Libby, she's got 5 dogs, grown adult dogs that were puppies that did not pass muster. So, but not all my dogs passed. So now, and Wilma's passed as well. She's gone on to doggy heaven. So now I have a new keeper dog, and I'm feeling really good. My leg works good. I've got a trainer. I might do this again in hopes that somebody would not progress, and I would actually get to keep one of these beautiful, beautiful dogs. Oh, the tie-in at the correctional facility is really, really a cool deal. We work with the women's facility at Topeka. It's a club, Pets and Pals, I think, Pooches and Pals, and it's the stellar female inmates that get to participate. And it's one of those programs where if they mess up, they lose their privileges with the dogs. And dogs that need a little bit of extra training or special training go to Topeka and spend time, night and day with these inmates. There was one dog that went down. His person that he was a prospective person needed a dog to turn him over at night because his circulation was so bad. So about every half hour or so, they taught this dog to roll this kid over every 30 minutes. And his parents finally got to sleep. I mean, it's just absolutely incredible what you can teach these dogs to do. And the worry just went away from this young man's face and our parents' livelihoods. It amazes me. But it's also really, really good for the people that are in the program. One of the gals that got out has actually been a puppy raiser for us for the last, 5 or 10 years. I think but that's where she started. She got into trouble. Tinson and I went down and talked to these ladies one night, and I'm looking at these gals going, geez, it could have been me. It just could have been me. So I think it's really a very positive program.
Megan, in your travels outside of Kansas, what was your most impressive place that you visited?
I had a feeling that would be a question. I would say probably the Badlands as my number one. As far as national parks go, Glacier's probably close second. But and I think what made it so special was that there was hardly anyone there when I was there, so at least that I saw. So I kind of got to experience it alone, which was a really beautiful thing. So.
My question is also for Megan. Would you have any advice for someone who's never done any solo travel but is interested in it?
Talk to my husband. He did the same thing, but for a year and a lot more ruggedly than I did. I think planning really helped me, just knowing where I was going to stay since I was by myself. Make sure you call your mom. And I was lucky that I stayed in a lot of campgrounds because I just felt safer there, and I always had all the older women in the campground come up and make sure I was okay, and kind of shocked that I was by myself and let me know that if I needed anything to please come and knock on their door. But I would say the planning aspect, just having a clear plan of where I was going to go. probably helped out the most to keep me safe, at least.
I have a question for Jorge. What was the most challenging part of teaching your kids this higher level math? And then what was the most rewarding part?
It's the time aspect, to be quite honestly. For every hour of a lesson that I had to pitch or deliver, I probably spent 3, sometimes 4 hours in preparation so that I understood it, because and every problem exercise that he had to do or she had to do, I had to do first, of course. So it's the time. But it's been 2 years of statistics and probability.
Are your kids here?
Yes, they are. And they're...
What are the chances of that happening?
I've got a question for the kids. What does it feel like to have a skill so far above your peers?
Well, it always feels, I guess, kind of cool to know that my friends are struggling and I'm just over here and I know I'm trying to be funny, but it also helps because I get to help them, knowing that I can do not only this, but I feel glad that I can know the easy things that we're learning and helping others. It's kind of cool. So, yeah.
Megan, I really liked your talk about traveling. I haven't done a lot, and I was interested. I was wondering, when you go to the national parks, can you like camp and like bike and stuff like that there?
I think most of them have camping. I don't think all. I'm trying to think. We went to one that's actually this last summer, and you couldn't camp there. But I think most of them have camping. Like the Badlands, it was only primitive camping. Biking, I would guess that some of them have certain trails that you could bike on. It just kind of depends on the national park itself. But their websites are very informative and give you all that information, and that's what I kind of relied on to help me in my planning.
So I was wondering a little bit about the ketogenic diet. I've looked up some of the recommended courses before and just thought to myself, that is a heck of a lot of cholesterol. So can you speak to, do you know how cholesterol levels, how they affected you or anything like that?
I didn't do any testing either before, during, or after. But I know lots of online examples of people who have. And I think that one of the myths also that kind of comes along with that saturated fat is bad is also that dietary cholesterol affects serum cholesterol, which is actually a relationship that is not very concrete and not well understood. So I would say that eating cholesterol doesn't necessarily mean that you will have higher cholesterol in your bloodstream. I know that serum cholesterol responds more to sugar actually than to dietary fat. But I know people also who have done the ketogenic diet eating absurd amounts of cholesterol and their cholesterol numbers go down.
I'm also doing keto, so I could speak on this. My doctor was actually surprised how much my cholesterol, my good cholesterol went up, my bad cholesterol went down, and he was shocked and amazed, and he was just like, okay, let's start talking about getting rid of some of the meds that you're on because your levels are real good. So.
Same person here, the diet. I am a vegetarian, and it's mainly because of an enzyme. I can't digest meats. I can digest seared tuna, but I can't eat that every day. So and beans are the only, legumes and lentils. Lentils are high in protein, but I have a cousin who is on this diet, and she said, well, she won't eat those things. So what do you do? Any ideas?
Yeah, I mean, that's a difficult situation. I mean, I'm glad we live like in a time now where being vegetarian is possible, but I'd say for most of human history, it probably wasn't possible. So we're kind of living in times that aren't so natural. And, I would not recommend a vegetarian version of the ketogenic diet. I think that a vegetarian diet that includes, as many different species of plants and macronutrients as you can get is probably the best. Yeah.
Rather than getting up and down or shouting at you, I'll just, Jorge, I admire you that you were able to convince your kids that you were smarter than they were. And kids, good for you for recognizing that your dad could teach you something. Good for you, really. I've also done a lot of solo traveling and through Latin America, actually. And, I highly recommend it. You really are more engaged with people when you travel by yourself than when you're traveling with other people because everyone comes up to you. I really want to know what happened to that telemarketer.
Well, the good thing about writing fiction is you can kill off somebody without too much problem. But I didn't actually kill this one off, but she did get badly injured and kidnapped, and so not too well for them.
Oh, great. And thank you for your warm story about the puppies and the people. That was wonderful. Your sharing of your deep tragedy and your recovery was very moving, and thank you very much. And you've given me something to think about diet, but I am a vegetarian for 43 years, and it's not, that approach is not something I would try personally, but I think it's very, very interesting to listen to. And you've been talking about your diet in the past tense, and I wonder why you quit.
Yeah, so I did the diet for about 6 months. But then, so it's hard to, one of the drawbacks, probably in my experience, the only drawback of the ketogenic diet is that it's kind of hard to put on muscle. It's probably difficult because it's so hard to even eat at a maintenance level of calories, because it's so satiating. You're just so full all the time. And so, I wanted to put on some muscle, so and insulin also plays a big role in muscle growth, but I am hungry all the time.
What do you do now for what do you add then to your diet?
I've tried to add low glycemic complex starches like potatoes and plantains and whole grains. I find that sugar is really, spiking insulin with sugar really makes you hungry.
right, I have a question for Mandy. In your presentation, you spoke a lot about self-care and the importance of that. So I was just curious if you had any strategies that you would recommend for people wanting to learn how to set healthy boundaries and learning more how to say no, and then what you found most helpful in your experience.
Healthy boundaries is something that I struggle with, honestly. I think probably 99.9% of Americans do, I would say. Because it's something that we're taught that helping others and being available for others and being in service is like the highest form of being human and doing what we need to do. But we very rarely ever speak to who's there for us. We are. I'm here for me, you're here for you. And if that first part there about not pouring from an empty cup. So the more we give, the more we do, the more we are engaged in the world around us, then we find the more tired we are and the more exhausted we are, the more angry we get. You know, things become not a joy anymore. Now it's an obligation. And when we hit that point, you might need to take a retreat for a few months and you know, to get that time back to be able to recenter yourself. And so I think it is a much more healthy practice for us to stop and say, wait, I'm putting a little more of me into this than maybe the situation requires. And one of the things that really helps me with that part is that even though we are all in this together, we are also in it on our own, and we cannot help or do or enable other people. We cannot do things for people. They're not going to learn their lessons if we do it for them. So that way of thinking helps me to remember that maybe if I'm putting so much energy into something, then they're not going to learn from it. And that helps me to remember to say, okay, wait, this is mine, that's yours, here's my line.
Patricia, what are the requirements to become a puppy raiser?
I have no idea. None whatsoever. I signed up, I called them, wrote my little application out, and then I called them, I think in June before, and I said, you know, if you really want me to do this, or if I get to do this, I need this puppy now so we can get organized enough to start teaching in the fall. Because I've had puppies before, and I understand it takes a little while to get their act together. So we have puppy raisers from all walks of life, older people, younger people. It's an amazing mix of really incredibly kind-hearted souls. We're all a little bit odd for one reason or the other, probably because we just adore the dog so much, and we have friends that are the same way. But it works. It really works out well. And the trainers are so good. They take, like Ajani, that was my puppy, that she could sleep through lectures. I mean, she was really good at that. And found Patrick that needed this dog to get him through his last couple years of college. And it's miraculous how this works out. But anybody can sign up. They're close by. If you're really interested in KSTS, they're having a graduation October 5th, the same day as the Baylor game, but it's at 11 o'clock in Washington, Kansas. And it's inspirational to go and see the handoff from the puppy raisers, get to introduce your pup with a new person. And it's amazing the stories that we hear coming back. Lately, it's been we have a long waiting list for facility dogs for teachers and counselors to get these dogs to help them with their work with young people. I think but the people that get guide dogs, oh my God, they're the bravest people in the whole world. You're going to trust this dog to take you down the street. And they're all alive.
Give our presenters one last round of applause. And feel free to stick around and talk to them one-on-one. Have a cookie if you're not doing keto. I think there are some nuts. There are some nuts over there if you are doing keto that might sustain you for a little bit, but at any rate, you're welcome to stay. And the library will close at 9 o'clock.